This is a
Okay.
remote meeting. Commissioners, staff, and meeting participants, thank you for joining us this evening for the October 14th, 2021 Monte Sereno Better Streets Commission. For the meeting's call to order, I'd like to point out a few things to help the commission members, staff, and members of the public successfully participate in the meeting. Commissioners, please keep your microphone muted until you wish to speak. You have a live mic. For this commission meeting, we are using Zoom to host the meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, chat and raise hand. Please use chat only to report technical issues, such as being unable to hear a commissioner speaking. Please use the raise hand if you would like to be recognized and able to speak to the commission by the chairperson. Comments in the chat feature will not be part of the public record. For the public to comment under oral communication or any agenda item, in addition to using the raise hand feature, emails can be submitted to the city engineer limited to 350 words, and they will be read into the record. This limit is set to adhere to the typical 3-minute allowance. Only attendees using the Zoom application can use the raise hand option to comment. Participation from a telephone will only allow for listening and does not allow for feedback. And finally, because we are not all in the same room, all votes for this meeting must be taken by roll call. That is the end of the spiel. I can't hear you, Barry. You're on mute.
Yep, sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. And now I guess go ahead with the roll call if you can.
Sure. Commissioner Pearson?
Here.
Commissioner Saxena?
Here.
Chair Chapin?
Here.
Commissioner Alves and Nelson are absent, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, next is orders of the day. Are there any changes to the orders of the day? I'm not even sure what that means in this case.
Just up top of the meeting, according to the city attorney, we need to just have the commission adopt motions determining that in-person meetings present a safety risk, so the commission can continue to have purely virtual meetings, as stated in the staff report of this first item.
Okay, I will propose that we do that. Do we need a second?
Yes.
Yes, can someone second that?
I second it.
All right, thank you, Nancy. And I assume we need to take a roll call vote on that?
Yes. Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena?
Yes.
Chair Chapin?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, oral communications. I didn't see anybody in the lobby. Do you see
I do
anybody?
not.
Okay, so there's no oral communication. How about written communications?
I have not received any for this meeting.
Okay. Next, we need to approve the minutes of our last meeting. Would somebody like to comment on those, or go ahead and make a proposal? We adopt them as is.
I make a motion.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and take a roll call on that, please, Jessica.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena?
Yes.
Chair Chapin?
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Okay. Unfinished business. Okay, so we're on to two standing items. The first one is Highway 9 safety. Do you have anything to add or comment on, Jessica?
I do not.
There's no news. So the only thing that I have is I did participate, and I'll comment a little more, I'll give more detail on this later, but Los Gatos has done a local road safety plan. And I listened to their presentation on the first phase of that this morning. And one thing that I noted was that they found the top 4 collision locations in Los Gatos were all intersections with Highway 9. Anywhere from Masol to, I think it was Masol to that stoplight just before you get to Kennedy, and then a couple intersections in between. So all that really does is reiterate that it's a dangerous intersection. But I don't have anything else to add other than informing everyone of that. So if no one else has any comments, we can go on. Does anybody have any comments on beach traffic? in that case, I wonder if we should remove that until Memorial Day, because that's not going to be an issue. Is that something that we can remember to add back on there, Jessica?
Absolutely. I can take note of
Okay.
putting that back on the meeting prior to Memorial Day or after Memorial Day.
Yeah, because it could very easily become a big issue next summer, but I don't think it'll come up again. It was not mentioned at all at the last Los Gatos meeting. All right, so let's go on to new business, bicycle and pedestrian master plan. You want to introduce that, don't you, Jessica?
Yes. So briefly, the city adopted with the bicycle and pedestrian master plan in 2016. That product was driven and mostly paid for by the town of Los Gatos with some input from the city. At the time, there was no Better Streets Commission, nor was there any kind of a permanent employee in the engineering role that I am in now. So the city comment and input was rather limited. As part of the goal setting process for the city council this year, one of their items for enhanced mobility was to update the master plan for specific to the city of Monte Sereno. During the summer of 2020, the town updated chapter 4 of the master plan with Los Gatos centric projects. They didn't remove any Monte Sereno projects, but they did update it for projects that have been completed or in process and other projects they've identified in the time since the plan had been adopted. So they did some audits, some analysis of collision data, and a citywide survey. Considering that the council has asked staff to update the bike pedestrian master plan, I wanted to bring this topic up here at the Better Streets Commission. Staff's intention is to probably do a update similar to what Los Gatos executed last year, which is just an update to chapter 4 for projects and other items that have come up recently. Staff thinks it's a good idea to go ahead and do a survey as well. The original survey completed in 2016 only had only 10% of the respondents were Monte Sereno residents. So I think there's quite a bit of input there that might have been missed that we could get through doing a Monte Sereno specific survey. Potential projects that could come out of updating this master plan really seem to be focused on sidewalks from the council, particularly at Dave's Avenue and perhaps other sidewalks in appropriate areas within the city. And if you all have any questions, please feel free to ask. I know I included a lot of attachments to this item.
Los Gatos, I think, spent a fair amount of money on consultants to put everything together. Is that even an option for us?
To procure a consultant?
Yes.
Potentially. I know this, not to get into our next item, but I know that part of the Measure B education encouragement funds, you can spend money on walk audits and other similar things that as long as you can justify using those funds for that, you can use those funds. So that is a potential use of those funds. I know their update, they used an intern for quite a bit of their work.
Well, for example, the project they have going on now, which I know they've hired an outside consultant for, is going through and looking at collision data, finding, the areas of the town that are the least safe. And that's what they're going to focus on. I think it'd be kind of nice if we could do something like that. If we knew where the most incidents were, that's where we could kind of focus what kind of projects we wanted to work on. Any thought on that?
I mean, definitely. I don't see a reason why we could not do that. And then focus the update on mitigating those circumstances that make them dangerous.
I'm just wondering if it would be, it's probably impossible to do anything this quick, but that consultant, since they're actually doing this project for Los Gatos right now, the incremental work to add Monte Sereno in probably isn't that much. But at the same time, it's probably, we'd have to go through all sorts of processes to get to actually engage them. I mean, you're not involved in that project at all, are you? Do you know?
I am
Do you
not.
know the? Mhm.
I could approach the consultant and the project manager in Los Gatos for this project, kind
Mhm.
of, and just see what a scope would look like for that,
Mhm.
and just kind of the cost, because under a certain amount of funding, you don't need to do a competitive bid. But if that was over like $20,000 in total work, then we'd have to do a competitive bid and that
Mhm.
sort of thing, which makes it considerably slower. But if the work is valued at less than that, there's a potential that even if we couldn't have them do the work concurrently with Los Gatos work, that they'd be very familiar with the shared corridors and things like that.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think I asked you this before, and I don't remember the answer, but part of the reason they're doing it is because it's required to get state highway funds starting in 2022. Do you?
Yes, a certain subset of federal funding you can only get if you have one of those plans completed. That is-
Yeah.
that's
Well, I think
accurate.
it's Caltrans also, I believe, but maybe I'm wrong on that. But if it's federal funding, then it probably wouldn't apply to us anyways. You don't know if that's something we're going to need to do at some point anyways.
In the current status of what's, how it's for the funds that it's
Mhm.
required for, no, because those are usually like large projects. I would assume
Mhm.
that they'd be looking for that kind of funding for their freeway overpass, the
Mhm.
like for projects of that kind of nature.
Okay.
But that isn't to say in the future that they wouldn't make that a requirement for other types of funding as well.
Okay. Okay. By the way, this is called the Local Road Safety Plan. And maybe I'll go ahead and I was going to share a little bit more about it later in the meeting, but I'll go ahead and talk about it now. What they've done so far is just done a report on the current conditions, so that they've gone through and they've looked at what intersections and what corridors have had the most collisions. And then I think the next steps are to figure out what to do about it, but they haven't got to that part of the process yet. Does anybody else have any comments or thoughts on how we would address the bicycle and pedestrian master plan?
I remember last year, I think one of the representative from Las Gatos came in and they shared the elaborate bicycle safety and road safety plan. It was somewhere around June or July, I think, last year. Maybe I'm mistaken. So is it the extension of that plan? Is that what it is, Jessica? Or is it something totally different?
This local road safety plan is something in addition to the Connect Los Gatos project. So I
Oh.
would, my assumption is by completing this plan, they'll have more projects within that program.
Mhm.
But right now they are different
Okay.
tasks.
Got it. Yeah, now I remember when you said that, then I remember it was different. But like as Perry said, that it would be helpful and I think more cost efficient if we can approach the same consultant and get it going. So because many of our roads are overlapping in certain ways too. So maybe it can be done quickly and easily, and we can figure out where we need to do what we need to do.
And just in case you were asking a slightly different question, the thing that I believe it was Ying that came in and talked to us,
Yes.
what about the plan? I mean, that's what we are supposed to be updating what she
Mhm.
talked to us about. But this new local road safety plan is something different yet,
Mhm.
which is
Right.
actually probably a little bit redundant, but since it's required for them to get funding, they have to do it.
Right. You're right.
Mhm. And so I guess the other thought is the city council or the city manager, which one was it was most interested in, concerned about sidewalks? Is that right, Jessica?
Correct. I had a couple different council members approach me about, in reference to this update about sidewalks. One specifically on Dave's, where it kind of ends after the school and then doesn't pick up again until you're almost in the county.
Mhm.
And then also just sidewalks, just kind of in general, like the question was, had an assessment been done of where they would be appropriate, which there has not been.
Mhm. And so what we're talking about with what the consultants have done so far, at least, doesn't really cover sidewalks unless it somehow involved, pedestrians getting in some sort of a collision with a car. So I'm wondering if there's a different way. You use the term walk audit, which I'm not sure exactly what that what that might mean, but I wonder if there's a different way or a different approach we should use to, understand what needs we have in terms of sidewalks. Any thoughts on that?
So to answer your question, a walk audit is where people basically stand on popular streets and count how many people walk by and in what direction and where they turn and that kind of thing. So that's a walk audit. A lot of times those help to see like where they may sidewalks may be most utilized or needed, but then oftentimes people don't walk places because there are no sidewalks. So that is that's transportation engineering.
Yeah.
And that's why, right, we hire consultants, because I am not an expert in transportation or active transportation. So I agree with the commission, or you specifically, Barry, that bringing in a consultant to do this would be a good idea if we wanted something a little bit more robust and identify areas and projects that right is backed up by someone with a transportation expertise.
Yeah, I'd feel a lot better than us just taking guesses.
So not to go on a different tangent altogether, Jessica, what are the ways we can deal with that sidewalk issues beyond Dave, which comes in the county area? Because many people do talk about it and complain about it and keep bringing the issue again and again, that this is a very small area which is not paved, everything else we have sidewalk. So is there any way, any project in the city going on, or any funding we can get, federal or otherwise, which can be utilized to pave that area?
So, I mean, the city can use its transportation funds to do sidewalks if that's how the council wants to move forward with the funds. I will say it's very helpful to have those types of projects in some kind of plan, like a bicycle and pedestrian master plan, when you apply for one-time grants or, reoccurring grants for federal or state funding, to prove that it went through some kind of public process, that it's needed, and that, your city council is aware of it. So I would highly recommend with any kind of update we do that if that is something that the city wants to move forward with, for that particular project to end up in the planning document.
So if I go over to Dave's Avenue and walk around, will it be obvious to me what the issue is? Because it's not right now, because I don't spend a lot of time over there.
So if you walk past the, you're at Winchester and you walk past the school, the sidewalk goes for probably another 3/4 of a mile or so, and then kind of abruptly stops. And then it picks up again at Via Caballero, and there's a not quite like a retaining wall structure that, and then like an asphalt sidewalk, and that goes down to the city limits. But there's a gap there between that, in that neighborhood, and around an S curve, which is actually relatively dangerous for, I wouldn't walk there.
Well, given how many times it came up, I guess it's come up. It seems like it's something that probably should be added to the master plan. Even we don't need a consultant to tell us that would be a good idea. We might need one to tell us the right way to do it.
Right. So how do we do that? Do we ask the consultant to put it in the plan so they can take a look over and give us their report, or they come up with that and say that these are the issues you should be looking at?
Definitely in the beginning of when you put on a consultant, you can say these are projects that have already been potentially identified, and they just include it in their recommendations.
Got it.
We could. How is this physically going to get updated? Are you going to actually do the typing, Jessica, or what? how will that happen?
If
The-
we opt to not go with a consultant, yes, it would be
Yeah.
me modifying the document.
Okay. All right. So I guess what I would suggest is I'm going to go take a look at this section myself, and maybe everybody that's not familiar with it could take a look at it. And we might want to at least already have a vision in our minds on how to add that to the bicycle and pedestrian plan. And then in parallel, you can talk to Los Gatos and the consultancy, Jessica, and get some idea whether we can get them to take a look at Monte Sereno for a reasonable price, and maybe and find out exactly what they're doing. And if you think that it'll actually be useful for this, those are the two things that come to mind.
I can absolutely do that prior to the next meeting.
Okay, so maybe we could, should we agendaize, or will that just cause a lot of panic? The talking more specifically about the sidewalk, because it would be nice if everybody was familiar with it. Maybe everybody is familiar with it, but me. Before we talk about it again, or what's?
I'm sorry, you want me to agendize a item specifically talking about that sidewalk app?
Well, I don't. I'm thinking out loud, really.
Oh, okay.
I just how do we get the members that are, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but how do we get the members that are absent today to make sure that they become familiar with it, so everybody can talk about it in detail down the road? And which brings up another question: to add anything to the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, do we need to have a community notification before it can be put on there? You know, if it's a sidewalk in front of somebody's house, for example.
I mean, not to have it in a planning document, no.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
we should. I mean, we're having the discussion at the public meetings and things like that, but there's no like noticing to be had because we're not actually building anything.
So if someone has some issue, like there is a portion of sidewalk missing on Highway 9 too, and people do keep asking about that and keep checking about that, but I guess like they don't find the time to come to the Better Street Commission meetings or even city council meetings. Unless we ask for community input, how would we know where the potential problems can be, or what the consultant should be looking? Like 5 of us cannot know every street and every potential problem, right?
Correct. And that's why I would recommend, as part of either getting a consultant or not, doing a specific survey for the residents of Monte Sereno, similar to the one that Los Gatos did last summer.
Ah, okay. So start from there, and that will bring community input, and then we will potentially know the scope of the survey and if we need the consultant or we don't need the consultant. Is that right?
Well, I'd like to comment on what you're saying. The consultant will look at collision data.
Mhm.
And so if there's any dangerous spots, they'll be able to bring that to our attention.
Ah, okay. So
That's one of the advantages I see.
got it. So not the small problems or medium-sized problem. This is like big road safety kind of survey they will do. But if there are issues like the sidewalk or Highway 9 sidewalk or anything else, then how do we address it? How do people, I know they have means, they can email and they can come to the meetings and they can do numbers of things, but since they don't do it, how do we reach out to that, or how do we put it on our plan when we are hiring a consultant or we are applying for federal grant? How do we make sure that we are getting enough grants to take care of those issues?
Well, I heard a couple questions in there. One was, how do we find out about it? And I think a survey is a good idea for finding out about things that maybe aren't showing up in the police records. There's no collisions, but people are inconvenienced.
Right.
But then you had another question about how do we apply for grant money? And that's, Jessica will have to comment on that. I have absolutely no idea.
Right. And so my question is not how to apply. Of course, that Jessica will know, and the office, city office will know. What I was thinking, and just like you, I was thinking out loud, that there are certain problems and there are certain small problems which people are pretty frustrated about, and they talk in groups and communities and to their neighbors, and maybe if they find a city council member, they'll talk to them, or if they find a better street commissioner, they talk to them, but they do not bring it to a meeting, or they do not file a written report. So we don't get to know about each and everything, like this Dave's Avenue missing sidewalk portion. People have been talking about it for a long time, and we have talked about it in few of our meetings too. It has come up in one way or another, but since there is no written documentation, there is nothing concrete that Jessica knows or we know. So how are these minute problems or medium-sized problems get addressed? How can we make sure that they are on the list of consultant when they are going around and looking at those things? Is there a way we can make sure that, and I know it's like opening a Pandora box, if we just send an email to resident, everybody would talk about the street in front of their house, but is there a better way to find out what the problems might be and what we can ask the consultant to look over?
You mean above and beyond a survey?
Mm-hmm. Above and beyond the collision survey.
Well, Jessica is, I believe, talking about a survey that would go out to all residents. Is that correct, Jessica?
Correct.
Yeah. So one of her suggestions, which I guess we need to talk about how we would implement it, is to ask everybody to provide feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge list of feedback that Los Gatos got.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of it's useful.
I imagine.
But if more than just asking people to fill out a survey, I don't know if I don't know off the top of my head another way to keep track of that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Most of it would be the problems which are not worth hiring a consultant for, and I agree about that. It's just some of the big issues, if they keep coming again and again in a survey, then probably that is the best way to figure out that these are the pressing problems, and these are the ones we have to cover when our consultant is going out and doing their survey, along with the collision ones.
Would you, Jessica, would you think the consultant would help figure out how to do the survey, or is that what you would imagine?
That could definitely be part of the scope. Yes, that is definitely something we can get a consultant to include in the scope for an update to this plan.
And if you haven't, do you think you could find out if the Los Gatos survey, since it appears that people that filled out the survey and told where they lived, if we could sort the data by people that lived in Monte Sereno, that could provide us with some useful information.
That's a good question. Yeah, I can look in to see if that's doable.
Yeah. Hopefully they save the data in such a way we could tease that out. Okay. So the two actions that I see are the same. Are Jessica will investigate if the consultant can help us out, because we really probably need somebody that's very professional to help us with the survey to make sure that it's useful. And then the minor issue is anybody that's not familiar with the Dave's Avenue situation should go over there and walk it. Do you think there's anything else we should do before the next meeting?
I mean, if you haven't had a chance to look at the master plan, now would be a good time, but otherwise I don't think so.
Yeah, I've looked at it quite a bit myself, even before preparing for this meeting. Okay. All right. In that case, should we move on to the next item?
I think so.
Does that seem reasonable, Jessica?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, look at the agenda. The next thing is the bicycle education and encouragement funds. And the wording was a little challenging in your description of what's happened to the funds already. So if you could go ahead and explain
Sure. Yeah, no
explain
problem.
that again, I'd appreciate it.
So the city, as part of the 2016 Measure B County tax measure, receives $10,000 per year solely to fund bicycle and pedestrian educational programs. There was some issues before the money started coming out. There was a lawsuit, so there was a bunch of backed up money that we got at once, and then there's been 10,000 per year for the past 2 fiscal years. So in total, the city has about $50,000 in unspent funds. Also partly to do with that the Safe Routes to School program really didn't spend all the funding they received last year and didn't really need our funds. So not including the money that we've already kind of told Safe Routes to School that we would give to them from last fiscal year, there's about $40,000 in uncovered funds for the city to spend on the program. Per the VTA guidelines, I provided a list of encouragement programs and projects that the city could potentially do. It's not an exhaustive list. So if there are any other ideas that can be justified, we can run those by VTA. There is a time limit to spending some of these monies. The $40,000 we're talking about needs to be spent by June 30th of 2023. And let me know if I need to clarify further about this funding.
Well, can you clarify the first $10,000? So has any of that been dispersed?
No.
No. So do they have to actually, come back with how they're going to spend it, and that's how it would get dispersed?
Correct. It's a reimbursement. So they do whatever their program is that they say they're going to do, and then they invoice us, and then we get reimbursed from the VTA. And so we did sign an MOU with Safe Routes to School, so we are obligated to at some point provide them with $10,000 for a part of their program. But yeah, as of today, none of that has been spent.
So that probably won't happen, but that's in danger of going away also if they don't.
If they don't, yes. They have hired a new coordinator. Their coordinator had resigned over COVID, and so they have a new coordinator. It seems like this year and definitely next school year they'll be back up to speed. But last year, like many programs, really didn't get a whole lot done due to COVID.
And the same with, I guess, $2,000 went to the Bicycle Coalition.
So that we have not, well, that was the intention of the commission. That also hasn't been requested. We haven't put it towards any program. That sum is actually just kind of floating out there. That has not been legally committed to the Bicycle Coalition.
Okay, but they do spend a lot of money. Probably if they knew it was there, they would try to spend it. Did we agree that we were going to do that? I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. Was that a decision that our committee made, or the council agreed with, to give them $2,000?
Yes, in December of 2019.
Okay, all right. So is it appropriate for me to remind them if I have personal contacts?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. I separately, I have upcoming meetings with one of their people, one of their members. So I'm going to bring that up. All right. So we understand, and that has the same deadline, the 2023 deadline.
Correct.
Okay. The one thing that comes to mind is the consultants probably know how the game is played. They might be able to use some of this money for some of that study that some of the study we want them to do. I don't know.
I believe so, and that's something I can inquire with the VTA about.
Mhm.
But I would say at least partially would be able to cover
Mhm.
some of that proposed work.
Yeah, I would guess the consultants have already looked into it,
Yeah.
because they want to get as much money as they can. So that's something that I guess I would suggest that we do is try to use it as much of it as we can to try to make our own streets safer. Otherwise, and does anybody else have any comments on what we should be doing going forward?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm pretty sure consultants know if we can or cannot because they're doing the same work for other cities and towns. So it would be, I think, better idea to take their guidance, how we can justify and make our own street safer.
Mhm.
And of course, provide it to the coalition, biking coalition. I remember that meeting in December. That was like my first one I observed, and they did have an elaborate presentation and everything. So it would be worth it if they can utilize that money.
Mhm. Mhm. And I still think that both those organizations are very worthwhile. And so my reaction is make the money available to them, but require that, they come to us and say, this is a specific thing I'm going to do with it. I want to do this program. I mean, the Safe Routes to School has a whole boatload of potential programs that they've talked about doing. And so if they said, well, we want to spend X amount of money at the elementary schools, doing this program, and I would personally be inclined to go along with that. But I guess, given our experience so far, I would prefer to, that they say we're going to use it for this program, instead of just kind of saying, oh, you can have this money.
Yeah, correct. Specifics would be good because in that presentation, they did have very many ideas and plans. But after that, since things closed down and we all went to online, and I'm sure there would be changes in their own organization too, probably. So we never get to have the specifics that what they are going to do and what kind of money they need and where it is going. So that would be something we can hear from them. So it is more justified where the money is going and what they're doing with it and how it is getting utilized.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments? Jessica, do you have any other suggestions?
I don't. I'm glad to hear that you're reaffirming that you guys look positively at the two programs that we had talked about almost 2 years ago now. I can definitely I actually have a meeting scheduled with Safe Routes to School next month about kind of what it looks like moving forward and their spending, because I know that they're also getting a lot of funds from the town of Los Gatos, and they had there's a lot of reporting involved with the Measure B money. And so I know that was a struggle for everyone this year. And so kind of seeing how that can go smoother. And I think part of that is doing some of that detailed work up front. And so I can definitely come back to the commission next meeting with the results of that meeting with Safe Routes to School.
And I guess the most important thing is you want to raise the big flag if it looks like they're going to have trouble spending it in a useful way, because then we need to be more aggressive about finding other worthwhile organizations or other things to do with it.
Right.
Okay. All right. Have we given you enough information? Are you satisfied, Jessica, that you know what to do moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, we can move on. If nobody objects, we'll go ahead and move on. Committee and commission reports. So I guess what I'll do is I'll just briefly talk about a couple of meetings I was at earlier this week. The VTA, and you're probably involved in this, Jessica, that the thing that took the most time was talking about updating the county guidelines for bike parking. So for commercial buildings or any sort of development, they want to increase and better define what kind of bike parking needs to happen, so that we encourage, so people have safe places to put their bike, both long-term and short-term. And that affects a lot of big developments. I'm not sure that it'll have any impact directly on Monte Sereno. It probably will have an impact on some things in Los Gatos that people might bike to. But that's that was the main topic of conversation at the last VTA, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting. I attended this morning the Los Gatos Streets Commission meeting. There was a fairly big debate over improvements on Shannon Road, the flat part of Shannon Road. That's not very close to Monte Sereno, but it was just interesting hearing the discussion and the feedback from residents, and that the city staff and the commission wanted to add sidewalks. I think everybody agreed that they wanted to have sidewalks up and down the street, but they also wanted to have bike lanes with bollards, like they do on Blossom Hill Road. And some of the residents were very unhappy. They were all for a bike lane, but they thought the bollards were very unsightly and didn't belong on a street like Shannon. So it was just interesting to hear the back and forth on that and the kind of issues we might have if we make significant changes to any of our streets. Another project they have going on is they're trying to identify how much employee parking they need, and so they've done an extensive survey with the employers, the businesses downtown, and they're going to identify employee parking areas so that employees don't have to keep moving their cars, and then they're going to put up wayfinding signs to direct employees on where to park. And then the last thing that I already mentioned earlier is they're working on this local road safety plan, and the consultants have appeared to have finished phase one, which is just looking at the current conditions, not looking at what to do going forward, but just to look at where they are now. And I mentioned earlier, the top 4 collision locations were on Highway 9. And then they are going to be at the Los Gatos Farmers Market this weekend. So if anybody wants to go talk to these consultants, that would be a good place to do it. I assume that we shouldn't engage them on the subject of working for Monte Sereno, though. We should leave that to you, right, Jessica?
Correct.
So that's all I have for, let's see, the topic of committee and commission reports. Does anybody else have any anything they would like to comment on or tell us about? In that case, I believe we can go on to the city engineer's report.
Yes. So I have a few items about happenings around town. The first one is the work on Winchester. I'm sure you have all noticed. They're getting towards the end here. They decided to go with night work for the final striping just because it's been rather difficult to do that much striping on a major arterial during the day. So they'll be doing night work to finish that bicycle and parking and just general roadway striping starting next Sunday night for about a week. The city currently has the La Recañada neighborhood project underway. Right now, Xena Avenue is getting its curbs and gutters. That should be done in the next couple of weeks. And then after that, this roadway will be reconstructed. The work on Clara and Natalie streets will not be completed until the beginning of next year, just because having 2 contractors out there at one time would be very messy. And then to start after this contractor is completed in November would put us doing major work over the holidays, which nobody wants. So those other 2 roadway construction projects will be beginning in the beginning of next year, weather dependent. There will be consultants out on the roads in mid-November for our 2021 pavement management program. That's where they go and assess the conditions of all the streets. They give us a new street rating and then suggestions for funding street improvements for the next 5 years. That is funded mostly by the VTA. The city kicks in about $3 grand, and that happens every other year. So this year is the year. And so I will have the preliminary report for that for you all the beginning of next year, but the consultants will be out in November. And then last but not least, this next council meeting, so next Tuesday, one of the council members requested staff look into residential permit parking programs. So having zones in the city where it's permit parking. And so no decisions have been made on that. The staff report recommends if the council wants to move forward with establishing a program, that the methods come back to the Better Streets Commission. So that may or may not be an item that comes back to the commission for its December meeting, depending on what the council has to say about the preliminary findings. Are there any questions? That's all I had.
Residential parking. So are there areas in the city where there are parking issues? I mean, that really surprises me that that's coming up.
Yeah, that surprises me too. I was going to ask the same question. Where are they thinking of putting this permit residential parking, like on the street, or like we don't have those kind of establishments at least in our city, right, where we need permit parking?
So that was a surprise to me too. I've been requested a couple of times to look into it from residents who are directly off of Winchester. And I think that this council topic is somewhat in response to some of the SB 9 development potential regulations that are coming down to make it easier to subdivide lots and making potential parking issues. So trying to kind of get ahead of potential problems. There is one permit parking zone in the city, and it is right off Winchester on Valley Oak Drive, where it backs into a multi-unit residential building that's in Los Gatos that has a gate that's connected to Valley Oak. So they have permit parking there to keep people from the larger development parking on Valley Oak. But that is the only one that I know of currently in the city.
So they go to the city hall to get a parking permit if they live there?
So apparently they did in 1995. And it doesn't seem like it's really been enforced since then, but the signage is still there and it's still on the books. And that honestly seems to be keeping the issue at bay. I haven't received any complaints. But if the city were to establish a policy such that that's being potentially proposed at the council meeting next week, that would be something that would be part of that policy, is when to issue permits and how and annually. And there's a portion of the city code, and forgive me, I don't know the chapter off the top of my head, that already addresses some of these issues that just isn't utilized.
Okay. All right. So you'll just let us know what happens, unless we eavesdrop on the city council meeting. You'll let us know whether that's something we need to worry about going forward or not.
Right. You're definitely free to listen to and comment at the city council meeting. Like I said, it may or may not come back to you depending on that discussion on Tuesday.
Okay. And then I'm just curious, the work you talked about up generally in the Rinconada area. I mean, does that use our annual budget for road work?
So that was a special project this year. Our general roadway update money went to the Winchester project this year.
Okay. So this is a special project.
Yes.
So we had, and was there any issue at all coming up with that money, or did we have plenty of money and the council didn't blink an eye, or what happened there?
Topic of discussion. There were a few large projects proposed in the budgeting this year. This project, the La Rinconada neighborhood project, and then a couple other larger projects that have yet to come to be. One of them being the annex building next door has not been, there wasn't an award for construction for that. So I would say overall in the city budget, we're under.
Mm.
But this project had the least amount of discussion of the 3 large projects proposed for this fiscal year.
Mhm. Okay. And then is the next fiscal year, the road improvement projects, are they already programmed?
No. So I
Okay.
do have ideas for next year, but they have
Mhm.
in no way been solidified.
Okay, okay. And I guess while we're on since you brought it up, what is the plan, the annex? I mean, I'm kind of unaware of what's going on. I assume you're talking about the post office building?
Yes, the post office building. So there was a proposed, staff had an update to make it into a community center. There was also grant funding that was for parks and public spaces that the city got formula funds for that partially would fund that renovation. That
Mhm.
project did go out to bid. The bids came back very high and the council has yet to make any kind of a decision on that. So technically the bids are still good until November, but I suspect they won't be awarding a contract for at least for the bid that went out.
Mm.
And it's to be determined if they want to put it out to bid again. I think there's a subcommittee of the council that is discussing that.
Okay. All right, I don't have any more questions on the engineer's report. Any other questions? That was very informative. Thank you very much, Jessica. And you finished, is that correct?
Yes, that was it.
Okay. Future agenda items. Other than what we've talked about, you know, the 2 new business items will definitely be on our next agenda. We're going to remove beach traffic. I feel like we should leave Highway 9 Highway 9 safety on there, even if there's nothing to talk about, just so that I like to keep that in mind. Anybody else have any comments on a future agenda? Okay. In that case, with no objections, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting and we'll go see what the score of the baseball game is. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. You guys have a nice night.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.